The Idaho sun filtered gently through the attic window, casting long beams of golden light over stacks of memories. Demi Moore knelt among boxes labeled Christmas, Movies, Rumor's First Year, brushing dust from the edges like uncovering fossils. It had been years since she'd climbed up here. Years of life, transformation, heartbreak, healing. Today wasn't special. She wasn't looking for anything in particular, but the attic had been calling to her lately, like a soft whisper she couldn't ignore. She opened a wooden trunk marked 1999-2003, a turbulent stretch of years where personal and professional storms had collided. Inside were old scripts, faded Polaroids, and journals thick with her cursive. Her fingers grazed across the pages when something caught her eye. A sealed envelope, wedged between two hard-bound diaries. Its paper was aged, edges slightly curled. But what froze her heart was the handwriting. She knew that handwriting, every curve, every sharp edge of each letter. It was Bruce's. The ink had faded slightly, but it was unmistakable. To Demi, only if you're ready. Her breath hitched. A sudden wave of emotions surged, sharp and cold, like stepping into an unexpected tide. She hadn't seen this letter before, or had she seen it and forgotten, buried it, denied it? The envelope had clearly never been opened. For a long minute she just stared. Around her, the attic seemed to still. The air grew heavy, and the sound of her own heartbeat seemed to echo in the quiet space. Before we dive deeper into what Demi finds in that letter, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more real Hollywood stories that reveal the human side behind the fame. Demi sat back on her heels, her thumb tracing the seal. The weight of the letter felt disproportionate, as if it carried more than just words. Maybe time, maybe regret, maybe love. Her mind drifted, unbidden, to the last time she and Bruce had spoken more than pleasantries. They had remained close, for the kids, for their history. But this letter came from a time before clarity, before peace. She considered walking away, tucking it back where she found it. Maybe some things were better left unread, but something about Bruce's note, "Only if you're ready," echoed through her. Was she ready? She broke the seal, but just as the flap came undone, a sharp ring from her phone downstairs pulled her back into the present. She blinked, as if emerging from a dream. She tucked the letter gently under her arm and descended the stairs, the attic door creaking closed behind her. As she made her way to the kitchen, the envelope pressed to her chest. The weight of it felt real. It wasn't just a letter, it was a portal. They returned to a version of her younger self she thought she had left behind. The woman who had loved Bruce not as a co-parent, not as a friend, but as the man who once made her laugh in the middle of fights and wrote poetry in the margins of scripts. She didn't open it right away. Instead, she poured herself a glass of water, sat on the back porch, and watched the wind ripple through the trees. The letter lay beside her on the table, a silent invitation. It would be hours before she opened it. But when she finally did, what she read would change everything. Long before the quiet attic, before the solo retreats in Idaho, there was another life. A life lit by paparazzi flashes, red carpets, and whirlwind schedules. But behind all the glamour, there was them, Bruce and Demi. Two souls that had collided not in the chaos, but in the calm between it. She was already a rising star when they met, polished and fiery, but still carrying the weight of a turbulent childhood. He was charming, unpredictable, and disarmingly honest. Their first meeting wasn't fireworks, it was grounding. He made her laugh when she least expected, and she made him feel seen in ways he never admitted before. Their love wasn't quiet, it was passionate, raw, messy, and magnetic. From the outside, they were Hollywood royalty, but in private, they were just two people learning how to be together in the storm. Demi could still recall the soft mornings when they'd sit on the kitchen floor drinking coffee, talking about everything and nothing. He wrote her notes constantly, on napkins, in books, on the back of receipts. Once, during the filming of Die Hard 2, he sent her a note with a single line, "You're the only explosion I'll never recover from." It was over the top, classic Bruce. But it made her laugh until she cried. Their 3 daughters brought both chaos and meaning. The sleepless nights, the school recitals, the negotiations over who changed the next diaper, it all grounded them. And even as fame pulled them in different directions, they fought to hold on. But love, especially in the spotlight, has gravity working against it. And eventually, something cracked. The arguments came more often. The schedules never aligned. She would be filming in Europe, he'd be on location in New York. There were misunderstandings, missed birthdays, quiet disappointments. When they finally decided to separate, it wasn't dramatic. It was heartbreakingly calm. "We're better apart than broken together," Bruce had said. Even after the divorce, they remained family. That was always the word. Family. Holidays, birthdays, movie premieres. They showed up for each other, for the girls. They dated other people, found new rhythms. But there was always an unspoken current between them, a shared language. And then one day, Bruce had handed her a small sealed envelope at a family gathering. "When you're ready," he'd whispered. She remembered now. How had she forgotten? The girls had been running around, chaos all around them. She'd tucked the letter in her purse and never thought of it again. Eventually, it must have made its way to that trunk upstairs. Back on the porch, Demi looked at the letter again, the memory of that day clearer now. He had been quieter than usual, his eyes softer. She remembered the way his hand brushed hers when he gave it to her. At the time, she thought he was just being sentimental. But now, years later, with life slowed down and silence more abundant, she felt the gravity of that moment. She picked up the envelope again. The seal was broken, but she hadn't dared read the contents. Not yet. The time spent in memory was necessary, like warming up before a plunge into deep waters, because this wasn't just a letter. It was a piece of their shared history, frozen in ink. A version of Bruce she might never see again, and maybe, just maybe, it contained the words he had never found the courage to say out loud. She opened it fully, unfolded the single page, and began to read. The paper crackled softly in her hands, thin but intact, like it had been waiting patiently for its moment. Demi took a deep breath and let her eyes settle on the words. "Demi, if you're reading this, then you've decided you're ready. I wasn't sure if you ever would be, and I understand if it took you years. Maybe it's taken me just as long to write it." Her chest tightened. The handwriting was unmistakably his, leaning slightly right, sharp but emotional, like every word had weight behind it. "I've always found it easier to act out someone else's words than to write my own. But there's no character here, no script, just me, and the one woman who ever really knew me." A tear welled already. She wiped it away, determined not to miss a single word. "I think about us often, not just the love, but the noise of it. We were fire, sometimes wildfire, but fire warms too. And I've never found that same warmth again, not exactly, not in the same way." His honesty pierced through her like a song she hadn't heard in years, but still knew every word to. "You always saw the parts of me I tried to hide, the cracks, the fear. You knew how I used jokes to dodge the hard stuff, but with you I never had to pretend. That was terrifying. And beautiful." Her hands trembled as she read on, each word hitting deeper than the last. "When we split, I told people we'd grown apart, but that was only half true. I think I just didn't know how to keep loving you the right way. You deserved more than what I could give at the time. But I never stopped loving you, Demi. I just loved you quietly from the sidelines." A sob escaped her lips, sudden and soft. She pressed the letter to her chest, breathed in slowly, and then continued. "You were the one who grounded me. Even in chaos, you were the constant. I don't regret our time apart because it led you to your healing and maybe mine too, but if there's a part of you that ever wonders..." Yes, I did think about what it might have been like if we tried again. Her eyes burned now. She imagined him sitting down to write this, pausing between sentences, deciding which truths were worth telling. Then came the final lines, sharp, simple, and devastating. "I don't know when you'll read this. Maybe I'll be old. Maybe we both will. But know this. You were my greatest role, my truest scene, my one real script." The last sentence sat alone on the page. "And if this letter ever finds you, it means I never stopped believing in the magic of us." Demi stared at the words, unable to move. Around her, the world felt impossibly still. Even the wind seemed to pause out of respect. She folded the letter slowly, reverently. Her heart was full, yet broken open. Bruce hadn't written to rekindle something. He'd written to honor what had always been there, and now, after all these years, she knew their story hadn't ended. It had just changed form. That night, Demi didn't sleep. The letter lay open on the nightstand beside her, its words still echoing in her mind like a melody that refused to fade. She lay in the dark, eyes wide open, memories playing like silent films on the ceiling above. The past wasn't knocking, it was flooding in. She thought of their wedding day, how Bruce had whispered a joke during the vows just to make her laugh. The way he used to brush her hair behind her ear when she was thinking too hard, the handwritten notes he'd leave in her shoes before a premiere. How even in their worst moments, he'd find a way to break the tension with something ridiculous, like doing an impromptu Elvis impression in the kitchen. And now this letter, his most honest performance yet. She rose before dawn, wrapped in an old flannel robe, and walked barefoot through the house. The hardwood was cold, grounding. She ended up in the sunroom, the one filled with plants and worn furniture. She sat with a journal and a pen she hadn't touched in months. At first, she stared at the blank page, but then slowly, her hand began to move. "Bruce," she wrote, "I don't know if you'll ever read this. I'm not sure I'll ever send it, but I need to say these words, to honor what you gave me tonight." She poured it all out. The gratitude, the sorrow, the pieces of her heart she didn't even realize were still his. She wrote about the silence between them, how it was filled with things unsaid, how she had loved him, even in their distance, how he was still her family, but also something more than that, a mirror of a time when she was most alive, most uncertain, most real. The letter wasn't about rekindling romance. It was about recognition, about honoring the connection that still pulsed quietly beneath the years. She ended it simply, "If you ever wonder whether it mattered, it did. It always will." She folded her letter and placed it in a drawer. No envelope, no plan to send, but it was there, her answer. Later that morning, she sat again on the porch, the letter from Bruce in her lap. The sun had risen, painting the horizon with gold and fire. She picked it up, rereading the final line. "And if this letter ever finds you, it means I never stopped believing in the magic of us." The phrase clung to her like morning mist. That's when she knew what she had to do. Demi Rose went inside and found a small cedar box where she kept her most sacred things: baby bracelets, Polaroids from the early 90s, ticket stubs from their first movie date. She placed Bruce's letter gently inside. It belonged among the most irreplaceable parts of her life. As she closed the lid, a strange peace settled in. She didn't need anything more from him. He had already given her what mattered: truth, vulnerability, and a kind of love that transcended time and definition. She wasn't the woman she had been back then, and Bruce wasn't the same man. But the imprint they'd left on each other remained, unfading. They were not broken. They were just rewritten. A few weeks later, Demi stood outside a familiar home in Los Angeles. The garden smelled like lavender and old pine. She hadn't been here in some time, not like this, not with a purpose stitched to her chest. Bruce was inside. He had slowed down lately. Time, illness, life, it had softened him. The sparkle in his eye had dimmed a little, but it was still there, especially when he saw his daughters, or when old music played, or when she entered the room. She stepped in quietly. The house was still warm, lived in. Photos lined the hallway. Family vacations, birthdays, goofy snapshots of the girls with cake on their faces. Emma, Bruce's wife, greeted her kindly. They had an understanding, unspoken, but strong. A shared love for the same man in different lifetimes. "He's in the back," Emma said. "It's a good day." Demi walked to the sunroom. Bruce sat in his favorite chair, a blanket draped over his legs, a soft old Sinatra record playing in the background. He looked up, and a faint smile curled his lips. "Hey you," he said, voice raspy but familiar. She smiled and knelt beside him. She didn't bring the whole letter, just a part of it, copied in her own handwriting on a single page. "I read it," she said quietly. "The letter." His brow furrowed in recognition. She placed her hand over his. "And I wrote back." He nodded slowly, as if he understood everything without needing another word. She unfolded her paper, and with tears threatening, she read aloud, "If you ever wonder whether it mattered, it did. It always will." Bruce closed his eyes. A breath escaped his lips, deep and content. For a moment they were silent, two souls sitting in the space between love and memory. Her hand held his. In that moment, there was no past or future, only presence, only peace. Later, as she left the house, she didn't cry. She didn't ache. She felt whole. Some chapters didn't need rewriting, they just needed to be remembered. Back in Idaho, she placed the original letter back in the cedar box, beside her reply. She added one more item, a photo of the two of them laughing on a movie set, arms around each other, lost in a world only they understood. She closed the box and locked it. That night she sat on the same porch watching the stars blink alive. She could almost hear his voice again, some old playful line meant just for her, and she smiled. Some love stories don't end. They evolve, they transform, they remain, not in how they once were, but in how they are remembered, honored, lived. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more powerful, emotional Hollywood stories that remind us of the real people behind the spotlight. And click the video on your screen now to continue your journey into another unforgettable tale of love, legacy, and the truths we carry in silence.